Hello again. I can almost hear the cries of horror and disgust at the title I have chosen for this video. There's a reason for it. I'll come to that shortly. The idea of the ethnostate, a nation defined by and limited to those of certain ethnicity or race, was once very popular in Europe. It has, though, since the end of the Second World War, fallen from favour. Countries such as Hungary, which are keen to preserve their racial integrity, tend to be eyed a little askance these days. I want viewers to imagine, if they will, that we in this country decided that we would start rebuilding our nation as one based upon white European ethnicity, and that we began inviting all the descendants of British people who left the country over the past few centuries to go and live in Canada, Australia, and so on, to return home to Britain and take up citizenship here in their homeland. Of course, we would have to test their DNA to make sure that they really did have British ancestry, or at the very least, Northwest European ancestry. In fact, nobody would be granted British citizenship in future whose DNA did not show that their racial origins lay in Northwest Europe. I'm pretty sure that every left-wing, liberal and progressive person in Britain would be appalled at such an idea. Seriously? DNA test before British citizenship can be granted to a person? The comparisons with Nazi Germany practically write themselves. If any European country, Poland say, or Hungary, came up with such a scheme, the outrage would be off the scale. Nothing could more neatly expose the hypocrisy and double standards of white liberals. In Africa, the ethnostate is now becoming the favoured model of various countries, and nobody in the West bats an eyelid. They don't care. If you wish to be granted citizenship of Ghana, for instance, you will need a DNA test to show that your ancestral roots lie in West Africa. The same, of course, applies to those wishing to emigrate to Benin or Sierra Leone. In Liberia, citizenship has only ever been open to those described in the Constitution as being Negroes. If you are not black, you can never become a citizen of Liberia. Here then are countries which are openly and avowedly ethnostates, which define citizenship in terms of skin colour, and yet you'll hear nobody in the West ever mentioning, let alone objecting to this. The practice is only abhorrent when white people are at it. Perhaps the most delicious irony of all is that South Africa, for many decades the favourite cause of white liberals, is also playing the same game. The Zulus are currently engaged in a campaign against immigrants and attempts to make their homeland ethnically pure. It is being suggested now that once again DNA testing might have a role to play in this project. Immigrants have been blocked from accessing healthcare in South Africa, and across the whole country there is widespread racial prejudice against those from West Africa, such as Nigerians. There are increasing calls in South Africa for South Africa for the South Africans to be a reasonable motto to adopt. I wonder what people would make of similar cries of Britain, this country of Britain for the British. You see things such as racism, nationalism, disapproval of ethnostates, horror at the idea of linking citizenship with DNA and skin colour, all only run in one direction, which is to say preference for black people and to the disadvantage of those who are white. For my own part, although I'm not seriously calling for British citizenship to be defined by DNA tests, as is the case in Ghana, I will remark that I think that my undiluted Northwest European DNA does give me a sure claim to citizenship of this country, than some others whose origin might perhaps lay a little further afield.